Hi, this is Jeremy. I'm going to work through the exercises that go with a Math Antics video lesson, Proportions. You ready? Let's go. Okay, our first problem says find the missing number n by cross multiplying. Now, before we do that, I want to clear up something that might confuse some of you when you see this problem. You may say, wait a second, isn't this an equivalent fraction? Fraction equals another fraction. And I thought this video was about proportions. Well, just like a fraction and a ratio are basically the same thing, it's just usually we see a ratio with units. It's the same with equivalent fractions and proportions. They're basically the same thing. It's just normally when we talk about proportions, we have units involved. It's applying to some real world situation, but that doesn't have to be the case. This equivalent fraction here works basically the same way, and we can cross multiply to solve for the missing number just like if there were units here. You can think of it like a unitless proportion. Okay, so let's do that. Let's cross multiply and find this missing number n, which is the top number of our first fraction. To do that, we draw this cross shape, these circles, so that we know which terms or which numbers we're going to multiply together on each side of our new equation, because this is going to give us a new equation. Really, this is just a way of rearranging this proportion so that we can solve for n easier. Now, on the first side of our new equation, we're going to have n times 4. So let's write that here, n times 4. And on the other side is going to be the other part of the cross, 8 times 3. So let's write that over here, 8 times 3. And so this is an easier form to solve. We can go ahead and start that by simplifying this side that's just a number times a number, because we can do that easy. 8 times 3 is 24. So that side of the equation becomes very simple. And we still have an n times a 4 on this side. Now, since n is unknown, we can't go ahead and simplify that, but what we need to do instead is get this n all by itself. And since it's being multiplied by 4, we can undo that by dividing by 4, by putting it over 4 like this. And then what happens is that this 4 will cancel on this side, and on this side we have to divide it. We had to do it on both sides to keep this equation balanced. We had to divide it by 4 on this side and 4 on this side. So now on this side, because the 4 is canceled, we're left with just n all by itself like we wanted. And on this side, we have 24 over 4, which is 24 divided by 4. We know from our multiplication table that that's just 6. So we've solved for n. Now we know that n equals 6. And our next problem also says find the missing number n by cross multiplying. And again, we have a proportion here that doesn't have any units. But the difference this time is that the missing number n is on the top number of the second fraction. And it doesn't matter where that missing number is. It could be at any of these 4 positions. Cross multiplying works the same no matter how you do it. It's just that the n will be in a different place in your rewritten equation. So let's go ahead and draw our crisscross shape here so that we know which numbers to multiply. On the first side, we'll have 3 times 12. 3 times 12. And that's going to equal the other pair, 2 times n. 2 times n on this side. So you see the difference is that since n was over on this fraction this time, now n ends up over on this side, and our 2 numbers are on this side. But it works the same way. We'll simplify this side first because it's a number times a number. 3 times 12 is 36. So this side simplifies to 36. And on this side, we have 2 times n. We can't do that, but we don't need to. We just need n by itself. It's being multiplied by 2, so we'll just divide it by 2. But we have to do the same thing on the other side as well. So both sides are divided by 2. That means these 2's will cancel, and we're left with just n on this side of the equal sign. And on this side, we have 36 divided by 2, which is 18. Now, it might look a little funny to you that we have 18 equals n, but that's just exactly the same as n equals 18. And so we've found our missing number. We know that n equals 18. Okay, our next problem says find the missing number n in this proportion by cross multiplying. Okay, so this is pretty much the same as the last problem, except now we have units. So we're calling it a proportion, and we have the units in here. And because of that, it looks a little bit more complicated here. But it's really the same thing. If you cover up the units, you've got a fraction here equals a fraction here. And when we do our cross multiplying, we're going to just ignore the units while we cross multiply. We're going to remember that when we find our missing number n, its units are going to be miles here. This looks like miles and hours. So n's units are going to be miles. But while we're doing the cross multiplying, we're going to ignore the units. We're going to draw our cross shape here. And that will help us get our rearranged equation here, but we're going to not put the units on until the very end. So we'll start on this side with 60 times 8, 60 times 8 on the first side, and then that's going to equal 5 times n on the other side, 5 times n. Okay, now in this problem it also mentions that you can use a calculator. This is kind of a big multiplication here, 60 times 8. If you need the calculator, that's fine, but since we know that 6 times 8 is 48, we know that this side is going to be 480, and then that equals 5 times n. Okay, this is simplified, but we need to get rid of this 5 times the n. We need to get n by itself, so we'll divide both sides of the equation by 5. These 5's will cancel, leaving just n here by itself. But now we need to do 480 divided by 5. For that, I will get out the calculator here, and we'll do 480 divided by 5 equals 96. Okay, again, this might look a little funny because it's backwards. 96 equals n, but that's the same as n equals 96. And now we know we have a proportion here with units, so let's pay attention to what units we have. We know that the units for n were miles, so this would be n equals 96 miles. And that's our answer. All right, next we have a word problem that says, a factory makes 12 bikes in 3 hours. If it keeps making bikes at the same rate, how many bikes will it have made in 8 hours? Hint, set up a proportion. Okay, so this is a real-world problem where we need to find an unknown. We need to know how many bikes the factory can make in 8 hours, and we start by knowing how many it can make in only 3 hours, that it makes 12 in 3 hours. So we're going to use that information to set up our proportion, and a proportion is two ratios that are equal. And the key in setting that up is to make sure that the units of each of the ratios are exactly the same from one side to the other. So the ratio on the first side, let's set it up as 12 bikes on top, and let's have the 3 hours be on the bottom. We could have switched it. We could have hours on the top and bikes on the bottom. It doesn't matter, but this will be our first ratio. What does matter is that on this side, since we chose bikes on top for this side, we have to have bikes on top for the other side, and we don't know how many that is, so that's going to be our n. So we'll put down n bikes on the top of this side for this ratio. And we do know how many hours, though. It told us we're trying to figure out how many bikes could be made in 8 hours. So on this side, the bottom number will be 8 hours. Okay, so we've set our proportion here. It's two ratios that are equal. And now we know that we can solve this by cross-multiplying. And when we cross-multiply, we'll just ignore the units until the very end when we get our unknown number. Okay, so cross-multiplying, I'm not going to draw the crosses this time, but we start on this side with 12 and 8. That would be this cross here. 12 times 8 on the one side, and then it's going to be 3 and n on the other side. That would be the other part of the cross. 3 times n. All right, and it says we can use a calculator for this one, because to simplify this here, well, you probably know your 12 times table, but we can go ahead and use a calculator. 12 times 8 equals 96 on this side, and then that equals 3 times n over here. We want to get n all by itself. It's being multiplied by 3, so let's divide by 3. That will undo it. Divide by 3. The 3's will cancel on this side, leaving n all by itself. And on this side, we have 96 divided by 3. You might be able to do that in your head also, but we'll go ahead and divide it by 3 here. 96 divided by 3 equals 32. Okay, so that means that n equals 32. That's our missing number, and it's the number of bikes that could be made in 8 hours. So n equals 32 bikes. And next we have another word problem that says If it takes 2 cups of flour to make 45 cookies, how many cups of flour will it take to make 135 cookies? Again, our hint is to use a proportion to solve this problem. All right, so a proportion is 2 ratios set equal, and it looks like here we're going to have a ratio of the amount of flour, the number of cups of flour, to the number of cookies that we're going to end up. So it tells us here that if we have 2 cups of flour, we're going to have 45 cookies out of that. So let's set up that as our first ratio. 2 cups of flour, that's cups there, 2 cups, and that's going to give us 45 cookies. Okay, that's our first ratio. We'll set that equal to our second ratio. One of the numbers in that's going to be unknown, and it looks like it's going to be the number of cups of flour because it says how many cups of flour. Okay, so since cups is on the top on this side, it also needs to be on the top on this side, and we don't know that number, so we're going to say n cups on this side. And then we know it tells us that we're trying to get 135 cookies with that missing number, so that's going to be the bottom number, 135 cookies. Okay, so there's our proportion. 2 cups per 45 cookies equals an unknown number of cups for 135 cookies. We just need to solve for n. We'll do that by cross multiplying. We'll start with this part of the cross, 2 and 135. So we'll have 2 times 135 on this side of the new equation. And over here we'll have 45 times n. 45 times n for the other part of the cross. Okay. Here's our rearranged equation. Let's solve it. Let's go ahead and simplify the 2 times 135. We can use our calculator again. So let's do 2 times 135. That equals 270. 270. And on this side, it's still 45 times n. So let's divide by 45 to get n all by itself. Both sides of the equation need to be divided by 45. That means over here, the 45s will cancel, leaving just n all by itself. And over here, we have this division problem, 270 divided by 45. Use our calculator, 270 divided by 45 equals 6. Oh, wow. Nice, simple integer there. We have n equals 6, or 6 equals n, which is the same as n equals 6. And we need to get back to our units. We're looking for the number of cups of flour, so n equals 6 cups for our final answer. And our last problem says, on a map, 2 cities measure 6.2 centimeters apart. If the scale of the map is 5 centimeters per 10 miles, then how many miles apart are the cities? Hint, set up a proportion. Okay, so a map is an example of a scale drawing, and there's a scale factor on that map. It's telling us here that the scale of our map is 5 centimeters per 10 miles. What that means is that if you have a particular distance on your map on the paper, and let's say that that measures 5 centimeters on the paper, that is going to represent 10 miles in the real world. It doesn't mean that 5 centimeters is the same as 10 miles. That would be silly. It just means that 5 centimeters on the map is being used to represent 10 miles in the real world. So that's our scale factor. That's the ratio of the sizes, and that's going to be the first part of our proportion. 5 centimeters per 10 miles. Okay, so we're going to set that equal to another ratio with the same units. We know that centimeters must be on the top and miles must be on the bottom. And since we're looking for the number of miles apart that the cities are, that's the question, how many miles? That's going to be our unknown number. So it's going to be on the bottom, n miles over here. That's our unknown. And the cities on the map, it says that they measured 6.2 centimeters apart. So we know the number of centimeters apart that they are on the map. So that's the top number of our second ratio. Okay, we have 2 equal ratios, one with a missing number. That's a proportion here, and we're going to solve for that missing number. We'll do that by cross multiplying. We'll start with these here, 5 and n on the one side. 5 times n over here is going to be equal to 10 times 6.2. 10 times 6.2. Okay, we'll simplify this side since it's two numbers, 10 times 6.2. Now, even though that's a decimal here, this is pretty easy to multiply by 10 because we just shift the decimal point over 1 when we do that. 10 times 6.2 is going to be 62. You can check that on your calculator if you need to. And then that's going to equal 5 times n. And we want to get n all by itself. So that means since it's being multiplied by 5, we're going to divide by 5 on both sides of the equation, and that will cause these 5's to cancel out. N will be all by itself. Now we just need to simplify this part. 62 divided by 5. We'll go ahead and grab our calculator for that. 62 divided by 5 equals 12.4 for that answer. But 12.4 what? Well, we know that n is the number of miles between the two cities in the real world, so n equals 12.4 miles is our final answer.